So my brother-in-law, his name is Bobby, when he was 10 years old, and he and his father, they went on a fishing trip together with other dads and their kids. And they woke up early in the morning, and they got breakfast over a fire, and they prepared their lunches, little peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and those little celery sticks with peanut butter in them, and carrots cut. They had a thermos. They put milk in the thermos. And then, of course, what Bob would wait for at lunchtime, which was Hostess cupcakes. They got in their canoe and they paddled off. As they were leaving, one of the other dads said, "Let's have a contest. And the father and kid that comes back with the most fish wins." And all the kids went, "Yay!" And all the dads went, "Ugh." However, the cat was out of the bag. The toothpaste couldn't be pushed back into the tube at that point, mixing a few metaphors. And it was a done deal. So everybody went off to their own location on the lake, and Bobby and his dad went to Stinky Bay, a little inlet on the top of the lake. There they put the worms on their hooks, and they cast them into the water. And it wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes. And Bobby felt a tug on his pole. "Dad, I got one. I got one." "Well, it feels like a real big one." "Well, pull it in, son. Don't do it too quickly. You don't want to lose it." "Okay." And he reels it in, and there it is. And his dad holds it up and says, "First catch of the day. It's going to be a good one." "Yeah, it sure is. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win." And his dad took the fish and put it on a stringer, and they threw their lines in again. Dad was the next one to catch a fish. It was a wonderful fish. He brought it up. Bobby said, "I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win." "Well, I suppose we could," his dad said. "Let's put it on the stringer." So he put it on the stringer and put it over the side of the boat. The morning went on just like that. It seemed like every 20 minutes, a half hour, there was another fish they were pulling in and putting it on the stringer. Or his dad got another fish they were pulling in, putting it on the stringer. By the end of the morning, they had 8 fish on that stringer. You know what a stringer is? It's something you hold the fish on, and they just stay right on it. And if you pull it up out of the water, there's 8 fish hanging on that stringer, and then you put it over the side of the boat. Well, when the sun got high overhead, Bobby's dad said, "I think it's time for lunch." And so they opened up their bags. They got out peanut butter sandwiches, celery, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, celery with peanut butter in it, and those things that you love, raw carrots. But Bobby couldn't wait until the end. After everything was done, he got to have Hostess cupcakes that he washed down with a little milk. That was the best. And after lunch, he said, "Dad, I know the rest of the day is really going to be good because it was a great morning. We have 8 fish on our stringer. We're going to win." And his dad said to him, "Well, Bobby," he said, "you know, fishing isn't just about winning. I mean, fishing is really about being out here in nature and learning how to figure out where the fish are and to pull them in. And, of course, it's about that wonderful tasting meal that you have at the end of the day when you fry the fish up in the pan. That's what the fun of fishing is." "Oh, but Dad, don't you think winning is a little bit of fun too?" "Well, I suppose so. Yeah, we're going to win." And so they cast their lines back in the water, and it wasn't too long, and Bobby's dad got a fish, and he pulled it up to the boat, and he said, "Bobby, get the stringer so we can put it on." So Bobby reached down for the stringer. but it wasn't there. He said, Dad, the stringer isn't here. Oh, sure it is. It's right over there. We put it right over there on the edge of the canoe. And he looked again. No, Dad, it's not there. It's gone. Oh, it can't be gone. It can't be gone. And they looked underwater for it. Sure enough, it was gone. They paddled around a little bit, looking underwater to try to figure out where it was, but they couldn't see it anywhere. And Bobby was so sad. He said, Dad, we were going to win, and now we're not going to win. Don't worry, son, his dad said. We can fish really good this afternoon, and maybe we can get 8 more or 9 more. And so they started throwing their lines in. But you know what? That afternoon, it seemed as if the fish were taking a nap. And they didn't bite. Oh, they caught another one. That was nice. But all afternoon, they throw their lines in. They're trying different parts of Stinky Bay, and nothing happened. Finally, it was such, they had waited so long that it was time that they had to go. And Bobby's dad said to him, Bobby, I know it's tough about losing this stringer full of fish. We've got this one. We can go back, and we're just going to have to give up. And Bobby said, well, could I just throw one more line in? He said, okay, you can throw one more line in, but we're going to paddle the canoe headed back. So he threw his line in, and he set it down in the canoe. Then he started to paddle. But he was looking at his bobber out there. He said, Dad, maybe I can catch one more that'll be a really big one. And if I got a really big one, maybe I could get a prize. Wouldn't that be great? I could catch a really big one. Well, maybe, son, you could, maybe. And then he saw his bobber go down. Dad, my bobber just went down. And he grabbed a hold of his pole and he reeled it in. Dad, it's a big one. It's really a big one. Really? Yeah, it's very big. It's bigger than any of the other ones. Don't reel too fast, son. Just take it slow so you bring it in. I'll take it slow, Dad. And he pulls it all the way up to the boat. And his dad reached down and he pulled it up, and it wasn't a fish. It was 8 fish. It was the stringer. He'd hooked the stringer on the bottom. Bobby went, this is wonderful. Now we go back with 9 fish. We're going to win the contest. This is a miracle, he said. I call this the miracle of Stinky Bay. And that's how the story got its name. You know, in the New Testament, they don't use the word miracle almost at all. In the New Testament, they use this phrase called signs and wonders. And a sign is something that points to something else, bigger than itself or deeper than itself. And a wonder is something that happens, but you can't figure out exactly how it happened. And so you stand in wonder about this. A year ago or so, I told a story about the Dalai Lama's doctor who he went to Yale Hospital to do rounds there and was leading a bunch of other doctors around to look at different patients. And he diagnosed this one patient, a woman, just by feeling her pulse for a half hour, looking into her eyes. And then he also had a urine sample of hers and stirred it and smelled it. And from that, he said that she had a blockage in her heart. What? What? Holy Toledo. What is that about? I mean, I was in awe. It was a sign and a wonder to me when I read this story. I mean, at Yale, somebody's doing this. That's wild. Well, last summer, I told this story to a group of scientists. Carl and Marge were there. And some of the scientists were very upset about this. What are you doing telling this kind of a story, you know? It can't be proven. You know, can this be repeated? And what I realized was that this wasn't magic or anything like this. This was another medical tradition, a different culture altogether that had a different way of understanding what's going on inside of the human body. They arrived at the very same conclusion that the medical doctor of this woman had arrived at. That was, she had a heart blockage. But they arrived at it another way. So while I was in awe, and it was a sign and a wonder to me, the other scientists just doubted it. And doubt's not a bad thing. I mean, that's what Thomas did, right? In our story today. Because he wasn't around when Jesus showed up at a resurrection appearance, and the other disciples were there and Thomas wasn't. I'd love to know where he was. Why wasn't he there with them? But little things just drive me nuts sometimes. You'd think. And so when they told him what happened, he wasn't going to take their word for it. He didn't take their word for it. And I really like that he didn't take their word for it. Because faith is not about somebody else's authority. Faith is about your own experience. It's about how you experience God in the universe, in your own life. And here is Thomas not taking the word, but wanting faith to be his own experience. He didn't see the sign and the wonder. He wasn't present, so he wasn't going to believe at the time. I have a struggle. I'm a rationalist, pretty much. I have a struggle with a lot of the fantastic things that happen, you know. I don't go a lot for the Virgin Mary in a potato chip, or Jesus in a tortilla, or, the parking space that, you know, at the last minute it shows up, you know, well, what the heck? Why didn't I give enough time to find a parking space? You know, why am I saying, oh, God gave me a parking space? I don't really truck with that kind of view of God. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It does to more people, but it just doesn't work for me. It's a difficult thing. The Buddha told a story. He had been told that there had been a guru who had meditated for decades and now could walk on water. And the Buddha said, well, why doesn't he just pay the 3 rupees and take the ferry across the river like the rest of us? That's what I'm talking about right there, you know. On the other hand, there are things that happen that point us to something larger and deeper than we are. Could I have your bulletin? I was supposed to bring mine, but I want to see what's happening next. No. No, I have to read the quote at the top. So Einstein says there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. There's only 2 ways to do it, he says. You can't be in between. Thank you. And I'm with him on this. I mean, think about the sign and the wonder that an apple is. I mean, when I was a kid, they said, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Okay, so an apple is a tasty, healthy snack. Very nice. But it's not just a tasty, healthy snack. It points to something larger. This tree, the leaves, the roots, the orchard, the sun, the rain, the earth, the entire galaxy. None of that would exist. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. The apple wouldn't exist without the rest of that. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a miracle. An apple is a miracle. It's an amazing thing. It points to something larger than itself. Points to all of creation in which we all belong. Thomas puts his finger in the wound, in the hand, and in the side. And it's a way of saying, Thomas, you belong here. You belong with me. The Gospel of John is not asking people to believe simply on his authority. The Gospel of John, the whole book, is about finding union with God in your own experience. He teaches it to the woman at the well, to Nicodemus. He's teaching it to the disciples the whole time. His point isn't believe what I say. His point is experience what I've experienced through Jesus. And that is where you should be headed. Everything is a miracle. Everything is a sign and a wonder. And we are really fortunate to be able to share them together. Today we share this one. We come to the table, but it's no different than at your home. Because every time your family sits around the table, it's a miracle. Every time you have friends over to eat, it's a miracle. The food sustains your body, but the conversation, the time together, the repartee, the humor, it's all a miracle. It points to something larger than you are. Years later, I asked Bob, when he was older than being Bobby, and he'd written this story, and I asked him if he really thought that this was a miracle, that they found the stringer, And he said to me, when I wrote this story, I really did. I thought, yes, God gave us the stringer so I could go back and I could be a winner and win the contest, which they didn't win, by the way. But he said, then later I realized, that would just be about me winning, wouldn't it? He said, I realized later that there was a miracle at Stinky Bay. But the miracle wasn't about a stringer of fish being found. It was about a father loving a son. And about a little boy being brought through disappointment by his dad. Now that is a miracle.